Hi, everyone. I am Livia Kent. I'm the editor-in-chief of Psychotherapy Networker, and it is my privilege to be here with Bill Doherty, who is a long-time author written in the Psychotherapy Networker. Uh, Dr. Doherty is a professor in the Department of Family Social Science at the University of Minnesota, where he directs the Minnesota Couples on the Brink project. He's also, and I'm sure everyone has heard, the developer of discernment counseling and approach for couples on the brink of divorce. He directs the Citizen Professional Center, which does community engagement projects on healthcare and public issues such as political polarization. And I could go on and on. This is the last thing I'm going to say, Bill, about your new book, The Ethical Lives of Clients. And we excerpted that in the last issue. That article is what we'll be discussing today. And the book deals with the ethical dilemmas clients face and how therapists can be helpful. And you can read that excerpt for free on our site. Bill, I'm so excited to be here with you today. And I'm excited to discuss this article because I really enjoyed just sinking my teeth into it as many times as I got to read it, to get it ready for I should hold this up.
There you go.
There we go.
Yeah.
And then one more plug before we really get underway. This is a plug for this little thing we call the magazine, Psychotherapy Networker magazine. For tuning in today, if you go to psychotherapynetworker.org/Doherty, you see that at the bottom of your screen, you can subscribe to the Networker for $12 for an entire year of magazine issues. So we hope that we can get this in your hands. And again, you'll read articles such as this, which is how we designed Bill. Bill, did I forget anything I should say before?
No, thank you for that. And I'll just also say that I had a little audio difficulty, so I had to switch to my iPhone. So I'm a little bit vertical here, and you're horizontal, but it'll work.
Good. Well, thank you for bearing with us, and at least we can hear you. So maybe the first thing we should go ahead and do is define what you mean. So the article, by the way, I should read, Getting at the Heart of Affairs. We're discussing client secret affairs here, and more specifically, how to help clients examine ethical dilemmas. Your argument is an affair is an ethical dilemma, and that we have a lot of literature on helping clients in the aftermath of an affair, and not so much on helping clients in the midst of an affair decide what to do around the effects of their actions on others. So before we dig in, again, I want to define what you mean by ethical dilemmas and ethical consultation, because I think all of these therapists tuning in, we have people from England, from Serbia, from Canada, Texas, Saudi Arabia, Massachusetts, Paula from Philadelphia. I think a lot of therapists would say, Bill, ethics is not the purview of therapy.
Sure.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, in our tradition, ethics has been something that therapists worry about, get trained in. What I'm really saying is that ethical dilemmas and issues and struggles are part of human life. Whether to divorce or still work on your marriage, whether to keep a family secret or reveal it, whether to confront somebody who you think might be offended by what you say versus I'm going to go ahead anyway. There are loads and loads of ethical issues in everyday life, and we've kind of ignored those in therapy land. So we don't have established ways to consult with people about their ethical issues. Now, I define ethics in terms of clients as client behavior that has consequences for the welfare of others. So it's behavior that has impact on other people in their lives. And since the self is inherently relational, we are always impacting other people. And if there's a risk that our behavior can negatively impact them, then we're in the ethical domain. Affairs being one of the principal ethical issues that people deal with, because here I'm defining the affair as a secret romantic relationship with somebody who is not your partner, with the issues being that your partner's in the dark about it. We're not talking about polyamory where people have an agreement that they're going to have other relationships. Somebody is in the dark. They're going to feel betrayed, and yet there's an appeal to the relationship. That's why people get into it. So, what does the self need and desire versus the consequences for others? That's the ethical realm. And in the whole tradition of psychotherapy, we've had no way to deal with that.
We've been focused on what does the self need and answering that
Exactly.
question.
Yeah, part of what I argue is that the default ethic in most psychotherapy is, what do you need to do for you?
Right.
Right. That's the default. And that is an ethical consultation. It's not neutral, because if somebody is in a dilemma about, and these are self versus effects on others, and we collapse it on, what do you need to do for you? Well, that is a form of ethical consultation, but it's most therapists don't realize it because it's in our tradition to focus on the self-interest of the client.
So you mentioned even emotional affairs as
Yeah.
an ethical issue.
Yeah.
And I assume that's because that also has an effect on other people.
Well, yeah.
Or emotions, not just our internal.
Yeah. Yeah. So part of affairs, including emotional affairs, is secrecy and lying. Okay. So my wife says, how was my day? And so I report on the day and this and that and this and meeting. And I leave out the cappuccino I had with somebody I'm really grown quite fond of. I leave that out. And my wife, we're driving by that coffee shop, and my wife says, gee, we haven't been there a long time. No, I haven't been there either, kind of thing, right? So there's the secrecy and the lying, and then a lot of times the gradual transfer of my emotional energy to that other person, the other relationship, all of which my spouse doesn't know about. So in that sense, the emotional affair has an impact on my partner and on my relationship with my partner without their consent.
So most people in the midst of an affair, so lots of people have affairs. Lots of people come to therapy in the midst of an affair. But I don't know that they're necessarily coming for an ethical consultation, or at least they may not know it. So what, in your experience, is driving them into therapy, and how do you start an ethical how do you open that conversation and have that discussion about the effects on others without kind of steering and guiding? I mean, therapists like to think of themselves as neutral. Right. I don't have an opinion.
Right.
So what does that look like?
Well, people go to therapy for all kinds of reasons, for the depression, anxiety, their life stress, and their relationships, right? And so they come for lots of reasons. And when somebody tells us they're having an affair, most of the time they have some ethical qualm about it. I mean, the practically, one of the few areas, if you believe the national polls, the overwhelming majority of Americans disapprove of secret affairs. We call it cheating for a reason. Almost everybody who has a conscience has some pangs of conscience about, even if they feel it's justified, and but so it's not like I'm bringing in something from another universe. Mostly, they bring it up, and then you explore it with them. What I'm saying is that though in most psychotherapy, we're willing to explore the meaning of this for them, absolutely, and we ought to do that. How they feel about it, what they're getting out of the relationship. But if they say, I feel guilty, or they say things like, this isn't me, and particularly if somebody's having their first affair after pretty long marriage, they say things like, I never thought I would do this. And so can we follow that up? So what is it about this that isn't something you ever thought you'd do? How does it fit into your value system? You can ask them, whether they think their spouse is likely to find out, and if so, how they're going to feel about it. Those, what I just said is all about ethical consultation. Instead of when the client starts to go there, as I almost always do, kind of shutting that down and go back to just how is it working for you?
So I think, yeah. So you say in your article that most therapists that don't have training in the skills needed to do a sensitive, deep, ethical consultation. I wonder if you can say a little bit about what those skills are. I think you have a handy acronym for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't actually say that therapists don't have the skills, because the skills are actually quite common skills. It's just that we don't apply them. We stop ourselves from applying them. Okay, so it's not some fancy skills, but I talk about LEAP skills: listen, explore, affirm, offer perspective, and then occasionally the last one is challenge. But most is in the LEAP area. So it's when somebody says, I'm thinking about a particular client now who said, I'm miserable with my marriage. I'm getting so much out of this other relationship, but I don't see myself as somebody who cheats on your spouse, and I feel terrible about it. So this is some listening for the ethical content of this, and then I'm exploring it. That's the next one. So tell me more about that. And what are you, when you say you haven't been that kind of person? What do you mean? What are the values that you feel like you're compromising? When you say your spouse is going to be terribly hurt by this, how do you think they'll be hurt? Tell me more about that. You may be worried about the marriage breaking up and then your children. So tell me more about that. Okay. So it's just being willing to explore both sides of the client's dilemma here, because what the meaning of this relationship is, and then the possible consequences. So that's explore. A is affirm, and that is to affirm the client for being willing to address this in all of its complexity and to take into account the possible harm to others. Just affirming that. And then perspective is, as might be useful, weighing in. So here's an example of a perspective I have often used. Somebody, for the time being, they are really enjoying the other relationship. The spouse doesn't know, and even temporarily, their marital relationship might improve because, hey, I'm all fired up. I'm a happy guy here. My wife doesn't know why I'm happy, and so I can have this illusion that as a therapist, and I'm switching into my therapy role, I can say, it's not likely that you're going to continue in this phase that long. Either the affair gets deeper, in which case there's more questions about whether you're going to stay in the marriage or go through the affair, or your spouse suspects and finds out in some way. And so you're not likely to be in this sweet spot for a long time. That's a perspective.
I believe in the article you walk us through the case of working with a woman you call Cheryl. You help Cheryl examine, clarify her story about why she's having an affair, clarify how she's not having an affair because she has an abusive husband or there's anything terribly wrong. She's just sounds like a little bored and unhappy. So you really kind of walk her through questioning what she's going to get out of the affair. And you liken the affair to, what is it, a paradise, an island paradise.
Right.
Is it?
Exactly. Yep.
Residency. You want to leave us that?
So this would be an example of a perspective that I brought, that she's seeing this guy once a month or so for a long weekend on an exotic island. And it's lovely. It's captivating. None of the everyday responsibilities. And what I said was that she can't stay on that island indefinitely. That either that relationship goes deeper, in which case she has to move to the big island where she is now with her husband, where you've got everyday responsibilities and lots of, and you get used to somebody. And so what I said was, you're not going to be there indefinitely on that island. And really her choice was, since she was wanting a deep relationship in her life, whether to try to revive it with her husband, with the kids there and all of that, or whether to leave her marriage and try to have that kind of deeper relationship on the big island with this new man. But I was kind of popping the bubble that she could indefinitely be on the tropical exotic island in any relationship.
So you're giving this perspective, but do you feel that you're swaying your client by giving them perspective, or?
Well, I guess my point is, Livia, that we're always influencing our clients. We're always influencing our clients. It's just that if we stick with what do you need to do for you, we think we're not influencing them, because in good old Western individualistic culture, the question of what do you need to do for you seems like it's neutral. And it's not. Okay. So in this case with Cheryl, now part of the complexity of this, as you said, she thought her husband loved her, accepted her, and the other guy who had just left his wife wanted her to move away from the town where she was in, away with him. She would be leaving her kids, moving to another city for a relationship that was a once a month kind of thing, in a marriage that looked like it had potential. It looked like a train wreck for her, for her husband, for her family. So yes, when I did that tropical island thing, that was influential, because I thought she was.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we have a question that just came in that you address in the article. I think it'll be worthwhile addressing it here. How would you respond to affair ethics if you are working with a couple where the affair has not been disclosed to the partner? So it's only disclosed in therapy. What do you as a therapist do?
So I guess we're talking here about couples therapy, and the one partner tells me on the side that they are having an affair. Because
I think that's where the question is coming
from. Right. Well, and now therapists differ on this, but my now we're into the ethics of the therapist, because I will not keep that secret. I will not see a couple where one person has another relationship and their spouse doesn't know it. I'm a secret keeper. I won't do that. What I would challenge them to do is to reveal it. I won't reveal it for them, but that's what I'm challenging them to do. If they're in couples therapy with me because they seriously want to work on their relationship, having a secret relationship on the outside is not consistent with that.
Right.
Now,
right.
I do this thing called discernment. I do this thing called discernment counseling. If the marriage is on the brink, and if somebody's trying to decide whether to work on the marriage or not, I have a separate thing I do with them, and I can help them discern about whether to stay in the affair or work on the marriage. But it's not consistent in my mind to be in couples therapy, having a secret affair, and pretending you're there to work on the relationship. And so I'm not going to participate in that.
Right. And in the article with Cheryl, you're doing individual therapy with Cheryl.
That's right.
She has not told her husband.
That's right.
You say specifically to her, I can't tell you whether to reveal this to him or not, but you sort of gently guide her into what you just said, is if you really do decide to work on your marriage, you kind of give her perspective about how disclosing the affair might be a new start.
Yeah, that's right. And part of what I talk about in the article is that the disclosing is a complex ethical issue. Okay. And I talk about a situation in which I think it was really a big mistake for a husband to reveal to his wife that 40 years ago, he thought he was dying. He revealed to his wife that 40 years ago, he had an affair with her best friend. And by the way, I did mention it in the article just for confidentiality. There was a child from that. There was a child from that affair. I mean, and so he thinks he's dying, and he tells his wife, who was just devastated, well, he did not die. Okay. So she was having trouble forgiving him, and it rattled her whole sense of her life, her best friend. There's this child out there. And he was doing it for himself. I understand he wanted to confess before he died. Well, my view is that he should have confessed to somebody else other than his wife. That no gain going to come from that. On the other hand, if your marriage nearly ended because of an affair, current recent affair, it seems to me if you're full bore into the couples therapy, it can be a good idea. I can't force anybody to reveal it. So your spouse now is up to speed on what the heck has been happening to the relationship for the last year. Namely, you've had somebody else. And my view is that can be the ethically right thing to do, because I want to point this out about affairs. It isn't just the sexual part or the romantic part; it's the lying and the secrecy. And this is part of what's devastating to folks. And I'm encouraging the person having the affair to see that and take responsibility for that, while at the same time understanding why they had the affair, what the meaning of that was to them, and have a complex view of their situation, and ideally sharing that complex view with their spouse.
Yeah. Complicated work. It seems that a lot of the therapists in the chat are agreeing with you that therapists cannot be a secret keeper in couples work. No secrets. There was a surge of agreement when you mentioned that. So I just want to, for those of you who are just tuning in, this is Bill Doherty, the author of Getting at the Heart of Affairs: How to Help Clients Examine Ethical Dilemmas. It is from his new book, The Ethical Lives of Clients. You should check it out. The excerpt from the book is in the last issue of Psychotherapy Networker. If you go to psychotherapynetworker.org/Doherty, you can get a 1-year subscription to the magazine for $12. That's a special price for tuning in, and we appreciate it. And if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. We'd love to address them and get to them. We have one here. Where do you draw the line in working with someone if they continue to keep the affair secret? Will you do therapy with? We just addressed that.
Yeah. Now, but most of the time, affairs come out in individual therapy. Okay, so I do my consultation with somebody, and they make their choices. So I'm not going to fire somebody from individual therapy, but I'm going to raise this. In my book, I talk about the famous Woody Allen affair with Sun Yi, who was functionally his stepdaughter. Keeping that secret, and what's come out is that the therapist really did not address the ethical, moral aspects of this, because that's not the job of a therapist. And in fact, I did a public radio interview in which I talked about that Woody Allen case, and how I would have addressed with him the effect of him having this secret affair on not only this 18-year-old, but his younger children, his wife, Mia Farrow. I mean, this blew up the family, just absolutely blew up the family. And even if he didn't want to address it, I would feel like I had to, and I would. And I was on this radio show. It was New York Public Radio, and the first caller was a psychoanalyst who was appalled that I would raise this an ethical issue with Woody Allen if he wasn't interested in thinking of it that way. And the radio interviewer, was appalled by the psychoanalyst. And then here's what came out of this, Livia. I said, so if Sun Yi, if his stepdaughter was 17 instead of 18, well, then she said, well, you have to report.
Then it's an ethical.
Either hands off, like we're not going to touch it, or bang, you call the cops. Okay. And so that is what I view a substitution of the legal aspect, the legal dimension for the ethical. Like one day she turns, and now you do something. Now you bring it up. Now you say something. But a day later you don't. That's for me a cop out of the responsibility of therapists to help clients look at the impact of their behavior in others.
I think sometimes it's clear when we need to challenge. I think a lot of therapists I talk to are uncomfortable with
Sure.
with C and leave C, with challenging, with taking a stand. Do you have tips? What do you say around
Yeah. Well, this is people read the book. Okay. Uh, I talk extensively about this. The challenge is not something that I do very regularly. It's just that if you can't go there, if you can't allow yourself to ever challenge, well, then you're truncating what you can do for your client. And so an example is a guy, a father, recently divorced father, who, when he heard that his son, 7-year-old son, was calling his the stepfather, the new stepfather, he was calling him dad.
Mm.
My client put his foot down and said, "I will never speak to you again if you keep calling this man dad. Yeah, I never talk to you again." Whoa. Now, he was reporting it as he was sort of standing up for himself, kind of asserting himself. And I didn't, yeah, but there's really an impact here. He was threatening to abandon his son. And so I have to challenge him. I have to challenge him. But in my book and in my work, here's one of the tips. The more you're going to challenge, the softer your tone has to be. So I looked at him and I said, Bob, I know you love your son. And that's why you're so hurting here, because you're afraid you're going to lose his loyalty and love, which I don't think is going to happen. And in your distress, I'm really worried that you've hurt him and delivered a threat to him. That's really affecting him, even as we're sitting here now. Okay, so can see that was, I'm concerned, I'm worried. I affirmed. If you're going to challenge, you affirm. You deliver it directly but softly, in terms of what I'm worried for, or I think you're not seeing something. I think you're blinded to. Okay, and he got it right away. He went, oh, yes, I can see that. Okay, but that was a direct challenge.
We another question in here. Do you feel like some clients are coming to a therapist precisely because they won't be ethically challenged, but allowed to explore living in a different way?
That they will not be. Is that
Yeah.
the question? Yes, good point. A good point. You can go if you go to a friend, go to your parents or something, you may get some common sense, like, what the hell are you doing? Okay.
In that accent.
Yeah. Slap you up one side down the head. What are you doing here? But you go to a therapist for unconditional acceptance, which, yes, I want to accept my clients as persons unconditional, but not every behavior they do. Not everything they do that affects other people. So I think that is right. I think that therapists, that can, now we ought to be in a zone where we're not shaming people, and you're a bad person. So somebody having an affair, I explore what they're getting from it, what's positive, what the meaning is for them, how it fits into their life story. I'm not just, see, that's what a therapist will do, as opposed to the friend who might say, what are you doing? So I'm filling in that part of it, but I'm also helping them look at the effects and the consequences. And that's a holistic perspective, not a truncated one. A truncated moralistic perspective would be, I don't want to hear anything about what this is doing for you or how it fits into the arc of your life. Okay, I just want to focus on the negative impact. But the traditional therapy approach is, just, where is it with you? Now, here's the thing, though. A lot of therapists are closet ethical consultants. Behind closed doors, they try to influence somebody to, not to be charging off with their new boyfriend or girlfriend, but they don't talk about it in case consultation. Okay, we make mistakes then, because a lot of times therapists will blurt something out, sort of just start giving advice, and not be nuanced, not use those skills, those leap C skills. We can use our skills, and we don't have to just come right out with what we're thinking.
If you don't remember what Leap C stands for, you can read it in the last issue of Psychotherapy Networker. We're coming to the end of our time. I want to pop over to you one more question, Bill, and then we'll round it out. And That's not the question we want to do. How would you respond to a client that develops shame after acknowledging the ethics of their affair? Shame is a really hard thing to work with.
It's a human emotion. We're good at working with people's emotions, right? With their grief, and so guilt and shame, that we work with their anxiety. These are moral emotions that are in us for a reason, because sometimes we let ourselves down. Sometimes we hurt people, and it doesn't mean we're bad people. And so we work with those like we work with any other feelings. But my point is that certainly my training back in the 70s, like I was averse to help, even when people express those feelings, to help them see that there is something to it, that they may have harmed people. I had a client whose prior therapist, would never let him deal with the guilt he felt about how he treated a particular person in Vietnam, particular Vietnamese person. He never, nobody would ever let him go there with that guilt. They rushed to self-acceptance. They rushed to understanding the context. He wanted to process the effect of what he did on this person who was not a soldier in Vietnam. And so what I'm saying is that we should let clients process it, all of it, and not try to rescue them from guilt and shame that is appropriate to what they have done. Before we finish up, though, can I do another little plug here?
Please.
My daughter and I, who's a therapist, we've created a foundation, the Doherty Foundation.org, DohertyFoundation.org, and we're offering free training in what we're calling relational ethics in psychotherapy. We want to give this away, free training. We're doing webinars. We're offering free resources because we want to spread this, and we don't want money to be a barrier. So DohertyFoundation.org for getting on our list, and we're offering free trainings in what we're calling the relational ethics in psychotherapy.
What a valuable resource. Thank you, Bill. Thank you for this discussion. And thank you to everyone out there in social media who's watching and commenting and affirming. Elena says, thank you for the excellent reminder that the more intensely we challenge, the more gentle our tone must be. So Bill, I hope you have a great day.
Thank you.
Sorry, before we leave, one person wants you to repeat the training, the URL.
Yeah, so DohertyFoundation.org.
DohertyFoundation.org. Thank you.
Okay.